Hello and welcome. My name is Ian Holmes, and I'll be your host for today's event, the 2018 Immigration Trends Report, presented by Envoy, myself, and my co-host here, Mara Hess. Before we get into the presentation, I want to go over a few housekeeping items. This session is being recorded, and we'll be sure to send you a recorded session for your reference or to share with others in your organization within 24 hours of the presentation. It'll last about 35 to 45 minutes. And today, just given the format of the presentation, we won't be taking live questions and answers, but we will, however, be responding to questions after the presentation. So please do leverage the question section of the GoToWebinar. It should be at the bottom right-hand side of your webinar toolbar. So again, this is me. I'm Ian Helms. I am the content strategist here at Envoy. I play a role in conceptualizing and developing all of our resources. I'm super passionate about working here in my role because I get to keep individuals such as all of you on the line here up to date on the latest in immigration trends, news, and policy updates in order to help you better understand and navigate immigration processes. So I'm excited to lead this effort with the Immigration Trends Report. I've been living and breathing this data for the last few months, and so we're excited that you're here to join us in our discussion on our key topic, our key findings. I'm joined here by Mare Hess. She is our Director of Sales Development and plays a key role in driving new business and understanding the needs that customers have when it comes to the immigration space. She's also super passionate about the HR and tech space and has been using trends such as our Immigration Trends Report and other data throughout the years to help clients that she serves. So thank you for joining us as well, Mare.
Thanks, Ian.
I'm glad you're here. So again, a little more about Envoy as well. We're the leading immigration services provider. We combine expert legal representation with technology to provide the only enterprise platform that enables companies to effortlessly hire and manage their workforce across borders. That's everything from navigating U.S. immigration to securing global work authorization and business visas to tracking and managing international employees. We do that for more than 1,000 companies across various industries, locations, and company sizes, and we've even helped companies secure work authorization in more than 190 countries around the globe. So getting into today's agenda, we're super excited to present our 2018 Immigration Trends Report. This is the third annual report. We'll be going over what this means for your organization, and in the middle there you'll see our kind of three big takeaways. The demand for global talent remains high, and employee experience matters. And the last thing there is employers are turning to technology. So really, if you tune out and the only thing you learn from this webinar is this slide here, it's those three key points in the middle. Those are our main takeaways. So going into the survey methodology, we conducted a survey with the Harris poll from November to December of last year with 401 HR professionals and hiring managers across various industries and companies. They all process a wide range of visas, inbound to outbound, anywhere from small businesses, medium businesses, and enterprises. So it's a really comprehensive study, and someone in your shoes in some way, shape, or form would have responded to this data. So we're excited again to present it to you and show what it means to other folks in your shoes. So first, let's dig into inbound immigration. One thing that we learned this year is that despite a year of policy change in 2017 and procedural changes aimed at restricting employment-based immigration, employers haven't really changed their attitudes toward hiring foreign nationals. You'll see here on this slide that the demand for international talent has not gone down. And despite all of those immigration enforcement changes and policy changes, 53% of employers say that they still expect their foreign national headcount to increase, and 70% of employers say sourcing foreign nationals is it very or extremely important to their talent acquisition strategy. This is higher than last year's 63% of employers who said the same. So when you and it gets even more interesting. We don't have the stat on the screen here, but when we broke it down by technology companies alone, 64% expected their foreign national headcount to increase. And it's interesting as well. Immigrants account for about 17% of the U.S. labor force right now, according to the latest Pew Research data. And in the fall of 2015, about 55% of graduate students in STEM fields, that includes everything from math, computer sciences, engineering, were from abroad. And comparing that to 1994, only 40% of students were enrolled in computer science programs were from outside of the country. So there's a clear increasing need for foreign nationals in the U.S., whether it's their knowledge in the STEM fields, whether it's their expertise for companies, and all of those things. And we work with a lot of companies, especially in the technology sector, who experience rapid growth. And with those stats in mind, it's easy to see why foreign nationals are a necessary part of their strategy and to source high-skilled foreign talent from abroad. Foreign nationals also play a critical role in the success of companies. So we see here the top three kind of takeaways are that foreign nationals bring valuable new perspectives to the way that a company does business. There's a diversity that they bring to the table. They fill the skills gap from a knowledge perspective and an experience perspective, and it also helps companies increase their global competitiveness. So let's dive into that second set there. The skills gap is real. There's 6.1 million unemployed Americans in the U.S. and 5.8 million job openings, and that's 2.4 of those are STEM, and 1.4 million of those are software, according to the latest Department of Labor statistics and Bureau of Labor statistics. That means that there's almost enough jobs available to solve for unemployment. However, the problem, according to employers, is that Americans just simply don't have the skills or don't want the jobs that are open. Job seekers, according to a live career study, only match 59% of hard skills and 62% of soft skills in job ads. And so that kind of justifies that. This might mean our question asks, do you expect your workforce to grow? It might go beyond that. It might be that they need their foreign national workforce to grow. And that's also visible in that, according to Pew Research, the U.S. working age population will shrink by more than 17 million people in the next 17 years. But if the U.S. stays open to current levels of immigration versus its current stance towards curbing it, immigration and immigrants and their descendants will account for 88% of population growth over the next 50 years or so, also according to Pew. So confirming how critical international talent is, 1 in 5 employers report proactively seeking foreign national employees. And they do so in a reactive way. They're looking for whoever is the best fit for the jobs. This goes back into that skills gap stat. And they sponsor work visas for foreign talent as a reactive process based on job vacancies and the folks who apply to those openings. And if you take a step back even further, international talent isn't just critical for the U.S. economy from an employee perspective, but also from a job creation perspective. 40% of Fortune 500 companies were founded by immigrants or children of immigrants. And among those are common names, household names: Apple, Google, Amazon, eBay, Intel, Tesla, Yahoo, Capital One, and Kohl's, products that you use every day. And together, those 9 companies alone are worth more than $3 trillion and employ almost 1 million people. And then when you go to small businesses, almost 20% were founded by immigrants, which means that immigrant small businesses are responsible for around 10 million jobs. So that was a little bit about inbound. Now we're going to talk about outbound immigration. And what we found was that demand for work authorization outside the U.S. has not decreased despite a trend similar to the U.S. toward tougher international immigration policies. Our key takeaway here shows that 59% of employers expect their company's demand for global work authorization or outbound immigration to increase this year, which is the same as last year. So even given the news lately, companies aren't stopping their outbound kind of immigration strategies. And companies report an increase in demand for work authorization in India and China. So if you look at the stats here, you'll see that demand for work authorization in India, for example, has increased from 11% to 19%. And that's likely because companies are finding it increasingly difficult to bring talent to the U.S. So because of the current immigration system, 22% of companies are relocating their work overseas, and you'll see that in some of our stats later in the presentation. But I want to bring Mary's perspective in here because she works with clients and companies every day to kind of bring that perspective of why this might be, why this outbound trend might exist.
Yeah, so thanks, Ian. One of the main things that we're hearing from our customers, specifically around Canada and Mexico, it can be something as simple as a same time zone or geographic location. But then more strategically, Canada is increasingly known for its competitive immigration laws for attracting those highly skilled workers. When it comes to India, you think about the H-1B visa specifically, and with 80% of those H-1Bs going to Indian and Chinese nationals, it makes sense to go ahead and move your global locations to either of those locations. And we're increasingly hearing companies talking about, having their skilled employees work specifically, from their country of citizenship.
Absolutely. And so, that the importance of immigrants, the importance of immigrants and foreign national talent. So how do you attract those employees? How do you bring them in? Oftentimes it comes with competing for top talent with immigration-related perks. So employers are addressing the high demand for global talent by investing in these perks. And here are a few of those ways. 88% of employers say that they do invest in these perks. And relocation expenses, housing, and dependent visas, sponsoring dependent visas or green cards are at the top of that list.
Yeah, and with our customers across the board, employee perks have become a common theme for any recruiting strategy. We often hear in today's world about free food, unlimited PTO day, volunteer days, etc. But in the immigration space, employee perks are about making the employee's transition to a new country and position as comfortable as possible.
Exactly, and you'll see that here. So we've asked this question in our former immigration trends report. So I guess if you haven't seen our immigration trends reports, definitely go to trends.envoyglobal.com. You'll be able to find those reports and download those, as well as our key takeaways. But previously we didn't really dig into what those perks really meant. So on this slide you'll see travel perks equate to things like free airfare to visit their home country, airfare for immediate family member travel, free hotels to visit his or her family in their home country. Transportation can tie into rental cars, company cars, cars for spouses and family. And also with housing perks that can include anything from temporary housing, permanent corporate housing, or mortgage-related benefits.
Yeah, and originally we saw this theme kind of trending for companies and organizations that had a global presence, so not only a location in the U.S., but potentially in the U.K., India, or Brazil as well. We are seeing this theme kind of trending for all companies, so whether they are large or small, companies are investing in employee perks outside of the immigration space as well.
Absolutely, and one of those big perks too, it has to do with dependent support. So you want to provide a comfortable environment for your foreign national employee, and if they can't live here with their families or in their home country, if they can't support their families and their children, their spouse, that's kind of a big deal. So one of those big perks that we dug into as well is dependent support, and you'll see here that relocation assistance, payment for spousal or dependent green cards, and even social or networking opportunities were big factors that companies considered.
Yeah, and just piggybacking off of that a little bit, I've been nothing but short of impressed with the HR professionals that I've been working with in the past 3 years about the importance that they put on the dependent individual who is coming overseas as well with that employee. People really are investing the time, money, and energy into making sure not only the individual that's coming into the organization, but their family feels supported as well throughout that process.
Absolutely. And to go in even further, the biggest conversation starters we've noticed in last year's report in 2017 was surrounding green card policies. This ranged from instituting policies when they didn't exist to revising existing company policies, and learning more about what other companies are doing to stay competitive. So we dug into that even more this year, and we learned that it's still one of the most significant perks is green card sponsorship. And we learned that companies are doing so sooner and more often. So you'll see here 70% of employers are sponsoring green cards, and nearly almost 98% of them have changed their green card policy over the past year, with 37% sponsoring more green cards than before, and just under a third sponsoring green cards faster.
Yeah, and just going off of that, Ian, we've seen an increase in the new green card policies and policy changes for a number of reasons. The top two reasons, though, that I've heard from customers are first and foremost an increased anxiety around regulation changes or just the speculation of those changes. Companies want their employees to know that they are still a valued individual to their company despite what is going on in the news on a recurring basis. And then the second one, which has always been pretty common since my time of working at Envoy, is employee satisfaction and retention. These are highly skilled employees who bring a strong value add to companies, and because of that, they are looking to keep that talent within the organization. And by offering that green card, that is a way in which companies are retaining their employees long term.
Absolutely, and so we know that employers are sponsoring green cards sooner and more often, and so we're going to go into how they do so. And so on this slide, you'll see that 87% of employers pay for all of their green card fees. Half of those who do sponsor or pay for all of the green card fees do include some sort of a payback stipulation, and that ties into your company's specific immigration policy. And so if you have questions about creating an immigration policy for your organization, definitely go to resources.envoyglobal.com. We have step-by-step guides as well as other webinars on creating a competitive immigration policy. But these are some interesting stats here. And I don't know if, Mary, you have anything else to add.
Yeah, no, really the only thing I have to add is exactly what we saw in the research that was conducted by Harris, and that is that companies really across the board are starting to pay and dedicate resources towards the green card process, not only for the sponsored employee, but their families as well. It's becoming very common to offer those full green card packages up front. And then in the case of, an individual leaving the company, that's when the stipulation may come into play, but it's less and less common to see employers requiring the employee to pay for their green card sponsorship.
Yeah, that's great. And so we talked about sourcing foreign national talent, and how they're investing in talent. But employers are also telling us that it's not getting easier. And I mean, if you follow the news, you'll know that it's not getting easier as well. So we decided this year to dig into some of the challenges, even more so than last year, that employers are facing and how they're dealing with them. So here you'll see that 42% of employers say the biggest change they've noticed over the last year has been an increase in foreign national anxiety and questions. So this is something that Mary already talked about. But building on that, 35% say immigration-related cases have become more difficult.
Yeah, so going off of that, it's interesting enough, more than what I've been hearing about the actual regulation changes going into play, it's the regulation changes that are becoming a very consistent and reoccurring topic in the news. And as a result of that, that's really what's led to the increased employee anxiety around those changes and the idea of something new potentially coming up. I would say that we're hearing about employee questions on a pretty regular and daily basis. We as an organization see it here. There is a new level of uncertainty in the immigration space, and whether a regulation change goes into play, there are questions from every side of the spectrum, and that's really what we're seeing as a trend from an organizational standpoint.
Absolutely, and when it comes to employers, 26% fear missing a deadline the most of all, and 22% say that fielding questions, similar to what Mary was saying, from foreign nationals, is the most significant challenge, which was up from 12% last year. And that's anxiety and questions from employees seems to have almost increased by like double here. And employers say, twice as many employers as last year say their biggest pain point is managing foreign national anxiety.
Yeah, and then just going off of the fear of missing deadlines, we're seeing an increase of this fear mainly because people seem to really be taking a notice to the manual process that is still around managing expiration dates. And as regulation changes continue to happen and employee questions continue to come in, companies, I would say, are trying now more than ever to be proactive around those expiration dates hitting and those questions that could be coming in, and trying to be proactive versus reactive on all standpoints.
Absolutely. And when we look at the past 5 years, employers are saying that their company's visa application process has become tougher. 44% say it's become more difficult this year compared to only 35% who reported increased difficulty last year. And for human resources, who typically manage the application process, 52% report more difficulty compared to the hiring managers, who only 38% say that they're experiencing more difficulty when they're less involved. And one of these biggest challenges, and you'll especially see that around H-1Bs, which is a popular season that we're right in the midst of right now, is request for evidence. So the USCIS reported a 45% increase in requests for evidence on H-1Bs alone last year. And 58% of employers have seen their own RFEs increase over the past 5 years. And that's an increase from 45% in 2016. When you break it down even farther to those who've submitted an H-1B visa in particular, they're more than 6 times more likely to say that their RFEs have increased in the past 5 years.
Yeah, and just going based off of conversations that I've had with customers and my team has had with customers, I would say this is one of the most common trends that we've seen across the board when it comes to truly being impacted by the regulation changes in the past year. This has hit a variety of companies in a variety of different industries. When people think of RFEs, they try to associate a theme with them. And this year, we really have not seen a consistency around why or when RFEs are issued. But overall, this is definitely something that companies are taking note of. People are asking a lot more questions around them to their current providers and making sure that they're taking as many proactive steps on the front end to create the strongest petitions possible, just because of the increase that we have seen.
Absolutely. So what do you want done about these challenges? We asked our survey respondents to respond about what they'd like to see changed in the current immigration process, and 85% would like quicker processing times. 83% would like improved insights for employees into the USCIS case processing, and this really drives that employee experience theme home. So, bringing transparency to the process, helping reduce their anxiety, all those things kind of go together here.
Yeah, and in my 3 years of working with Envoy, as you can see from the chart alone, I would say these are some of the most common and consistent themes that I've seen and heard from our customers. Employers want to see faster processing time so they can have their employees start on time. That's not uncommon or rare. It's pretty easy to guess. But because most of these are controlled by the government around processing times, I would say that I have for the first time seen companies prioritizing their immigration partnerships more than ever. They're controlling the controllables. They're making sure that their front-end work is being as systematic as possible so that they can ensure that at least on the front end, things are happening in a timely and satisfactory level that they would expect.
Absolutely. And employers have faced challenges in hiring and retention since the start of 2017. And 85% say that the current U.S. immigration system has had an impact on this. Because of this, they're taking precautionary measures, like Mara mentioned. 28% have increased staff to address these new challenges. 26% have had to delay projects. And as we mentioned earlier in the presentation, 22% have even moved or relocated work overseas.
Yeah, and because immigration regulations stay top of mind, the impact of these changes are being felt, both U.S. and globally. And due to these changes, employers are evaluating their immigration programs now more than ever. Due to employee requests, they are turning to technology for help with the immigration process. And with that, we get to key takeaway 6, which is employers turn to technology to keep up with immigration changes and demands. Almost half of employers, 48%, are investing in technology-enabled platforms to manage the immigration process, and 62% of employers are making supplementary investments in data security. Close to half of employers are investing into these technology-enabled platforms because regulation changes realistically are not going away anytime soon, but also because human resource departments have seen the value in technology-enabled platforms to manage other HR functions like benefits and payroll and the time and dollar savings that they bring. And with that, employee experience becomes a differentiator and a focus area for employers. So 62% of employers have received more requests from their foreign national employees for more technology and for easier access to their immigration data. In today's current environment, we are hearing from customers now more than ever that their employees expect to have technology because it has become such a part of their daily lives. A lot of our customers have said that due to case processing times, regulation changes, and the back and forth communication that happens between the attorneys, HR users, and sponsors and employees, these employees are requiring more technology throughout the immigration process, so they have insight, if nothing else. And as a result of this increased demand, 56% of employers say employee experience is a deciding factor in evaluating their immigration program and potential partnerships. This is something that, I've really enjoyed seeing in the past 3 years of working here, because I would say that this was not a top priority, but more and more HR individuals, company and level users have been speaking about the employee experience and how important that is when it comes to things like the case approval rates, experience of the immigration attorneys and partnerships, and then just the overall technology. So
absolutely, and just to piggyback off of that, Mayor, to your point earlier on payroll, applicant tracking systems, employee engagement. There's a lot of technology that human resources teams invest in, and it's increasingly becoming evident that employee experience is ultimately one of the main factors, even more so than cost of those things. So there's a recent study by SHRM that said price is not a primary driver for large employers that are choosing among benefits administration technology platforms. It's the ease of use for the administrators and the employees, and so this brings home it's not just the employees that need or want the technology to improve the quality or their experience during the process, whether it's payroll, whether it's applying for a job, whether it's their immigration process. It's also the HR team and their efficiencies that are getting answered by things like technology and new platforms like this.
Yeah, and just to go a little deeper into the technology that companies are starting to require for their sponsored employees, but their organizations as well, is specifically around reporting compliance and the data storage as it pertains to the management of immigration casework. We're seeing this being brought into the immigration space more and more on a daily basis. And with that, despite an increase in site visits and demand for enhanced data security, employers are confident in their ability to manage immigration compliance. And with that, although 42% of employers have experienced a site visit, 92% say they feel confident in their ability to manage immigration compliance. So, due to this discrepancy in data, it is really smart to reach out to your current immigration provider and simply have a health check with your current immigration process and strategy, and make sure that in the case of an audit, in the case of reviewing that data, you are fully prepared. That the increase in site visits, we're not seeing that going away. So it's always best to reach out to your current provider and make sure that the practices you have in place are accurate and up to speed.
Yeah, and it's kind of an ironic stat, right? Like people think that they're confident in their compliance and their data security, but when you dig a little deeper and when you have conversations with companies, you kind of learn about their insecurities, and you see that even though they might think that they're being compliant, they might not understand all of the factors that play into compliance. They might not understand what it means to have secure data, and so in learning more, they kind of reveal those kind of insecurities, and that's shown in the stat about how even though 95% of employers say that they're confident in their data security, more than half are still making investments in it because they're learning about what that means and that they might not actually be as confident as they feel.
Exactly. And I think that brings us to the next point, which is once the employers do start having those conversations, you'll see that's where the investments in technology have increased substantially since 2016. Today, 48% use technology-enabled platforms to manage their current immigration process compared to the 38% of employers in 2016. That's a pretty substantial jump up when you think about it. And today, 46% use desktop software like Microsoft compared to the 35% in 2016. So despite whether or not you're using that technology-enabled platform, you are still seeing companies using the technology that they do have to better manage, store, and track their current immigration program. With that, employers are managing their immigration data with more traditional methods. So that's the data and tracking. 46% of HR professionals report HRIS as their primary system of record for immigration data, and 31% of employers still have their physical files in their office. This is not uncommon from conversations that I've had with customers across the board, but it is absolutely something that, again, I'm going to bring up that health check in regards to your current process and it being up to date and not compliant, but aligning with what the government does and does not allow. You do not need to have the paper file storage management like you did a year and a half ago. So absolutely recommend the health check in that area. And then with that, 61% of HR professionals say they evaluate their immigration program once a year. 57% of employers say they evaluate new providers to avoid mistakes from their immigration provider or partner. 23% look for new solutions because of dissatisfied employees. I would say from a personal perspective, I see the reason customers looking out to new immigration providers definitely varies. It could be because of an employee. It could be because of an out-of-date system. It could be because, like it says in here, they're just wanting to make sure that they are practicing the best immigration program possible. But we are seeing it becoming a more common theme that people are evaluating this process every year, much like they are their other HR, benefits, payroll systems. And then as mentioned previously, 42% of employers say the biggest change they've seen over the past year is increased employee anxiety and questions. In addition, 62% of employers say they are receiving an uptick in questions from their foreign national employees for more technology like mobile apps to access their immigration data. So we just went through some of the reasons why employers are turning to technology, but as we mentioned throughout this presentation, foreign national employees play a critical role to your organization, and with that, their increased anxiety during the immigration process, they're looking for new solutions, and like I've mentioned before, we've been nothing but short of impressed in the companies that have been investing the time and resources into looking into those opportunities for not only their company, but the employees as well as they're going through that transition period.
Absolutely. And with that, we're going to get to the conclusion of our presentation here. If you're interested in learning more, we only glossed over a lot of the data that we found in our immigration trends report. So if you want to download the full report, please head to trends.envoyglobal.com. You'll learn more about how the demand for global talent isn't going anywhere, why managing immigration means managing change, and you'll learn more about the fact that technology and data security are taking center stage. Again, if you have questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Mare specifically is happy to field your questions. You can email her at mare.hess@envoyglobal.com. And if you're attending this for continued education credits, we have our HRCI and SHRM activity IDs there. So again, head to trends.envoyglobal.com, resources.envoyglobal.com, or just envoyglobal.com, and you'll find this and much more for all of your immigration-related education and other content needs. So thank you all again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.